Hey guys, it's me. I am coming to you today on the 1 year anniversary of Argentina winning the World Cup in Qatar. And I want to read you a story from my book, Big Hit on the Block. The story that opens the collection is actually called The Penalty Kick. And it's a story that I've been writing in my head since I was a little boy in Bayonne, New Jersey, going to 16th Street Park and kicking the ball, putting myself in all kinds of scenarios. And in 2018, right before the World Cup in Russia, I wrote it imagining what it would be like to kick the penalty kick in the World Cup final. I shared it with you on my Substack account, Storytime with Big Head, right before the final between Argentina and France. And I said on there, I hope the final doesn't come down to a penalty kick, and it did. So because all of that stuff had to go right for this story to be relevant, I'm going to read it for you today. So here we go. The penalty kick. Jacob Costa gathered the ball from the back of the net and carried it 12 paces toward a spot he had picked out in the dirt in front of goal. He dug his toe in and stamped the ground hard. Jacob didn't want the ball to budge once he had set it. Satisfied, he leaned over and placed the ball gently into the dirt pocket. He examined it for a second, then lifted it about a foot from the ground and spun it carefully in his hands before placing it back onto the dirt. Jacob's dad had taught him to always set the ball down this way. Never let the referee do it for you, he had told him one afternoon as they practiced before a big game. It's your penalty kick, not theirs. Every day for 3 weeks, Jacob had watched World Cup games on TV with his grandfather. At the final whistle, he would sprint to the basement, grab a black and white soccer ball, then march down to the small park behind his parents' house to kick the ball until the floodlights came on. The lights signaled to Jacob that soon the adults would show up and that he had to go home. After rushing through dinner, Jacob spent the hour before sunset on the porch with the ball in his hands, watching curiously as older men hopped the yellow brick wall at the end of his street on their way to play soccer with their friends. They were mostly laborers from Mexico and Central America, and they wore jerseys Jacob recognized from the TV broadcasts. The dark green of Mexico, luminescent yellow of Brazil, and the deep red of Spain. The sun on his back in the stifling mid-July heat, Jacob took a step away from the ball and lifted his eyes toward the goal. The once white net was now a dusty gray and hanging sadly, full of holes. After taking a deep breath, he lifted his gaze to the sky and made the sign of the cross. "It all comes down to this," he heard the voice of the British commentator Ian Darke say. "Jacob Costa is going to be the last man to the spot for Argentina." In his head, he always played for Argentina. It was the team his dad and grandfather cheered for when they watched together in the kitchen. Standing behind the ball, Jacob lowered his gaze. He calculated 3 steps back and another to the left. With each movement, he felt as if he was stepping backward in time, transported to the Maracanã Stadium in Rio de Janeiro on the eve of the 1950 World Cup final between Brazil and Uruguay. Jacob turned his back and stared into the distance, imagining 200,000 people in the stands. That day, Uruguay miraculously came from behind to beat the hosts 2-1 in their backyard. His grandfather had told him the story many times. Supposedly, the Brazilian fans threw themselves to their deaths after losing the final. Across the country, the news reported heart attacks and suicides after the final whistle blew. Jacob inhaled through his nose, exhaled hard, and turned to face the goal again. "Costa has been Argentina's most consistent penalty taker. He hasn't missed from the spot all year, but can he do it on the big stage here? Millions around the world are watching, asking themselves the same question. Will Jacob Costa be the hero for Argentina?" Jacob scowled. His eyes narrowed. He was meters from the most fearsome goalkeeper he could imagine, a Frankenstein-esque creation, a mix of Gianluigi Buffon, Edwin van der Sar, and Hugo Lloris. Returned the glare. Jacob ran his left hand through his hair, which was drenched in sweat, and stared into the imaginary stands brimming with hordes of fans tensely awaiting his next move. Filling his lungs with air, Jacob focused his gaze on the goalkeeper in his mind. He was bouncing around, taunting him like a boxer dancing in the corner before throwing the first punch. Jacob smirked. He strode toward the ball, planted his left foot beside it, then drove a powerful shot that curved just inside the top right corner of the goal and through a hole in the net. Immediately, Jacob collapsed to his knees in the dirt. He raised his fist to heaven and buried his head in his hands, crying real tears. He's done it! Jacob Costa has done it! He's won the World Cup for Argentina with the very last kick of the match! The floodlights came on as Jacob kneeled in the dirt, imagining his teammates surrounding him. He felt their phantom embrace and heard the reverberations from the delirious throbbing of the people shouting in the stands. The ball was 20 yards away in a ditch beside the trees. It was time to go home. Thank you for listening. You can buy Big Head on the Block on Amazon, at Bear Den Books, in Knoxville, hopefully soon in many other places. I don't have much more to say. I'm enjoying this day, so vamos Argentina. Thank you for listening. Nos vemos pronto. Ciao.